doors that Bob and Doug are going to be walking out in just a minute. But first, we want to pause to honor today's efforts with our national anthem, and the incomparable Kelly Clarkson treats us now with her virtual rendition From Her Home to Yours. Here they come, NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. They've each made this journey twice before for the space shuttle missions, but they've never done this in a SpaceX spacesuit. They've never done this together, and they've never done this on their way to head to a commercially built rocket and spacecraft to head to space.
Marie, I was looking for that Astro van, and I see these white Teslas with meatballs and worms on them. It's just a new era in space travel.
Oh yeah, they're riding in Tesla Model X's. They've been equipped with cooling units, so once they sit inside, that umbilical that I was referring to earlier will connect to the spacesuit to provide cooling while they're inside of the vehicle.
And you can see them talking and waving with their families now. Wow. We just saw them do a virtual hug with their sons.
There's Megan and Karen and their sons, yeah.
They're the dads.
The dads, yeah.
It's so awesome.
Bob blowing his family a kiss. Doug actually got to take his wife and son up to the pad on the tower. Yesterday they tweeted out a photo. That was so cool.
I saw that picture, and it had a prominent worm in the picture, right?
Yes.
I'm telling you, worm all day. Wow. So they're climbing through those DeLorean doors of the Model X. This is totally from the future.
Are they stock? Are they stock Teslas?
And then you see in the front seat there, that's our flight surgeon. He's climbing in, and the suit technicians, there's one, Chris Trigg right there, number 12. He is buckling in. They're both, the two suit techs are buckling in, Bob and Doug, and they're connecting that umbilical.
And Lauren, I know you mentioned this earlier, but for folks that maybe weren't watching then or can't remember, I mean, we're in Florida, it's super hot, super muggy, so how are they staying cool?
There are these portable cooling units. We had one at the ONC building, or sorry, two at the ONC building. There are two in the Teslas. There'll be two in the elevators, and then two in the white room when they arrive on the crew arm. So we're just keeping that cool air flowing through the suits. There's actually ducting integrated into the suits to keep them cool. And you can see they're saying goodbye to their families. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome that their families get to come up to the window and obviously get a little closer than everybody else.
There's Megan and her son. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
These are precious moments. This is what it's all about, as I mentioned before. It's about the people. It's about the families and working together as one community to get Doug and Bob launching off to the cosmos, to the space station.
Yeah, it's emotional. It's emotional watching that.
It really is. There they go.
Now, as we see the convoy begin the journey to the pad, 39A, we are thinking about each and every one of you, our colleagues and friends at SpaceX and NASA, who have had a hand in seeing the Crew Dragon commercial crew program come to life.
And we wish every single one of you could be here up close to see this, but we want you to be a part of this journey regardless of where you are watching today. And so for the next few minutes, while they're making their way to the pad, we want to highlight those people whose hands and words and thoughts built all that we see here today. And we hope all of you watching can feel that pride that each of these NASA and SpaceX team members has for today. And we are following the convoy, and Leland, Lauren, I don't know about you guys, but I'm so glad that we had the chance to hear from the NASA and SpaceX teams that have been working behind the scenes, because Lauren, I know you know this all too well. I mean, these people have been working not only for, the last, since 2014 when SpaceX won this contract, but I mean, working long hours, long reviews, coronavirus happened, and then they're homeschooling their kids, still trying to get through all the final checkouts and closeouts to get to today, and we made it. And now we're just waiting on the weather, but it's just great that they got a chance to wish Bob and Doug good luck.
Absolutely. It is a bummer that we can't all be here in person, but to have that opportunity with that wall of cheers is pretty cool. And you're right. I mean, it's been years of extremely hard work. Fortunately, we've had little milestones along the way, like Demo 1 and IFA, the in-flight abort mission, but it was all leading up to this, and I speak for all of my friends and colleagues that are still working on this program. Today is a career just high for all of those people, if not the pinnacle of it.
Absolutely, and I know Doug and Bob appreciate them so much. And as they continue to make their way to the pad, the next astronauts to make this journey are also watching very closely. NASA astronauts Shannon Walker, Victor Glover, and Mike Hopkins, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Soichi Noguchi will also be flying. They'll be in the Crew 1 mission a little later this year. Of course, that's after Bob and Doug return home. Now, Crew 1 will be the second space flight for Walker and Hopkins, who each flew on the Russian Soyuz. And it will be the first space flight for Glover and the third space flight for Noguchi. He flew on both the Space Shuttle and the Soyuz previously. Now, the Crew 1 mission will be the first in a series of rotational flights to station after Demo 2, once NASA certifies the SpaceX systems for regular crew flights. And right now, Victor and Mike are following along from the Johnson Space Center past the vehicle assembly building. We're looking at the pad now. They've got probably about 3 more miles to go at this point. But what do you think that is going through their minds right now?
Well, you know, I was watching some video of Bob and Doug, the kind of the lighter side, and I would imagine that the two of them, they've trained so hard, they are meticulous at what they do. They might be telling jokes like we did when we were in the Astro van heading to Pad 39A. You've been together for so long, you know the systems, you know exactly what you're doing, and we had a moment of levity where we would tell jokes, and we wouldn't even tell the whole joke, we would just say the number, because we had said them so many times, and you know, we were high-fiving, we were chest bumping, we were, you know, getting ready mentally, but it was that moment of just, we've made all this preparation, and now it's game day. We're ready to get up in that vehicle and go to space.
And now we're going to go out to Hawthorne for the last leg of the convoy's trek to the launch pad. Dan?
And you can see on your screen, Bob and Doug are getting very, very close to Pad 39A. In addition to these launch pad upgrades, SpaceX also made changes to both Falcon 9 and Dragon to enable flying crew. A key update to this latest version of Dragon is its highly reliable launch escape system that is capable of carrying crew to safety at any point during ascent of the rocket.
Right, and I'm sorry, I'm just waiting for that pullback moment on the camera where we're going to see their cars roll right up to the pad. Another key upgrade, though, for everything today is Dragon's new life support system. As you can imagine, and oh, sorry, there we go, crew arriving at the pad. As you can imagine, flying humans requires keeping a habitable environment inside Dragon throughout the entire flight. And so that's everything like providing breathing air, keeping the capsule at a safe pressure, keeping it free of contaminants, removing carbon dioxide, regulating temperature and humidity, and implementing a waste collection system, aka the toilet.
The changes to Falcon 9 were small, but extremely meaningful to meet NASA's requirements for safety for human spaceflight. And specifically, SpaceX had to prove a high degree of fault tolerance, meaning that small failures in the system would not lead to mission failure. Falcon 9 was already able to handle engine failure, but new emphasis was put on making sure that a failure throughout any phase of launch would not mean mission failure. And that's a really cool view on your screen with Bob and Doug getting out of their Teslas. That is amazing. And this goes down all the way to latches, control valves, electronics, and wiring, and so much more to keep them safe.
All right, well, with the astronauts now on location at Pad 39A, Marie, Lauren, Leland, take us through the crew making their final steps towards that Dragon spacecraft.
All right, thanks, Dan. That was really cool to see. We can see the Teslas on the screen there. They're going to stop for Bob and Doug to take a little nature break before they make their way up to the pad. And we're expecting it should be about T-minus 2 hours and 55 minutes, so just under 3 minutes from now, we should hear a formal announcement on the loops that the crew is on the pad. So we'll quiet down to listen for that when we get a little closer. But Lauren, you didn't get a chance to mention while they were driving out there, they have a very cool playlist they had on the way out, right?
Yeah, I remember Bob tweeting, "What should I listen to on the way out?" So here's what they chose. The first is AC/DC's "Back in Black." I think he actually tweeted that one, or someone recommended it, which is super cool. And the reason being, they are back. Then they also listened to the elevator music from the Blues Brothers film. That song "Girl from Ipanema," and
that one?
I
Sing it,
believe
Leland.
so.
I just
Yeah,
wanna listen to Leland sing.
got another career.
Hey.
That and meatball loving. But the sort of symbolizing the fact that they're waiting. And the third song was the Star Spangled Banner, the Army French horns version, for very obvious reasons, that one.
Yeah, I got to set the mood, set the tone, right, Leland? You know all about that.
Tone, little meatball, you know, all good.
And
Don't make me come over there, Lauren.
so we're looking now at the Crew Dragon capsule on top of the Falcon 9 rocket, the impressive crew access arm. That's that black and white kind of hallway you see there. That's how the crew make their way over to Crew Dragon to climb inside. And that Falcon 9 rocket stands at base level there. And Leland, I know we talked about this. You know, you were out here last week and we were talking about how the pad looks so different from the shuttle days. Can you talk about what you remember and kind of how it's different now?
Yeah, I mean, the form and the function. I mean, this black pad with the white ticking, and you know, it's a really beautiful. You think about STEM education, but this is totally STEAM: science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And I think, you know, SpaceX has done an incredible job of making things look really beautiful and functional, and you know, everything just fits perfectly. And I think, you know, when we were having our launch pad, there were hoses and things hanging off, but this is a very sleek and elegant and kind of futuristic look at the next era of space travel. And you know, I just love seeing these Teslas versus the Astrovan. Are they doing selfies?
Looks like they're trying to strain to see the top of the Crew Dragon, just taking in the sight.
It's pretty high.
And I don't know if you caught this one. We could see it briefly on the shot, but the license plate says ISS BND, ISS bound.
Oh,
You
nice.
follow? Yeah.
Nice.
And hopefully they will be today. We just need the weather to say, I mean, it looks pretty nice right now, right? But I mean, obviously it's not just what the weather conditions are here. They've got to think about downrange in case of an abort, make sure it's okay for recovery if we get into a situation like that, which is unlikely.
So this elevator is going to take them up to level 255. It's not 255 floors, but that's 255 feet. And from there, they'll take, once they get up there, and this elevator is pretty zippy, so they'll get up there pretty quickly, they'll get out, and they'll walk up another flight of stairs to level 265, and that's where they will greet the crew arm.
And I don't know, well, obviously Leland's been in the elevator. Lauren, I'm pretty sure you've been out there too, but the first time I rode in that elevator, I was like, whoa, we're really moving in this.
Pull some G's.
A little bit of a jolt when it first goes.
Yeah, you get used to it. And then the jolt is a little bit more extreme when you get in the rocket and take off.
Just a little.
It's just a little primer. It's a primer.
The doors are opening. And here they come.
It's a beautiful view up there too of the, you know, all of the surroundings in Florida and this national wildlife retreat that we have here. But getting ready for the business at hand of getting in the rocket and heading to the cosmos.
And those are the stairs Lauren mentioned. They're at the it's the 255-foot level right now. I think I
Yes.
said that right. And now they're headed up the stairs to the 265-foot level. That's a level that will take them to where the crew access arm is in the white room.
Yeah, that's the view right there that they're looking at. And Lauren, what are those chevrons, those white chevrons on the floor? Where do they lead to?
Those are basically highlighting the exit path. So in the event that that anyone up there needed to get away ASAP, they follow those arrows to where escape baskets await them. There's 7 baskets, and they'll hop in there, and it's kind of like a zip line. They'll slide all the way down from that fixed service structure down to the ground, safe and away from the rocket.
Great.
And at the top right of your screen where you see them, there's actually a phone right up there next to the worm. There's the worm again, Leland. But there's
I'm okay
a phone.
with that. I'm okay with that now.
It really pops up there.
Yeah, it's like it belongs there or something.
It's funny, isn't it? Leland, tell us about the phone. What's the significance of the phone up there?
Yeah, I mean, you can call family members that you maybe weren't able to come to the launch, and in this case, there are quite a few of them. But you know, it's a last minute to say goodbye and say that you're going to talk to them when you get to space.
Absolutely. And again, they're just kind of taking in the sights before they go into the white room, and the pad team is there. You can see them. They're in black with the white numbers on their back. They're all members of the pad team. They're going to be helping them when they get into ingress. Actually, we're at T minus 2 hours and 50 minutes right now, at about T minus 2 hours and 35 minutes. So just under 15 minutes from now is when the astronauts will ingress. That's the term we use for climbing into Dragon. And of course, they will have the assistance of the suit techs and get buckled in. And so we want to head over to Hawthorne now for a preview of what's in store for not just Bob and
Earlier,
Doug,
we
but
showed you
future
a
space
first-hand
travelers.
look at where you would train if you were to fly with us on board Dragon. But now, let's take a peek inside of the spacecraft itself.
When we wanted to take Dragon and make it human-rated, I think we took a different approach to spaceship design than has previously been done, because we wanted this to feel like a 21st century spaceship. We wanted it to inspire another generation of astronauts. Really, everything when you look at Dragon was driven by function. We took into account everything from the placement of all the cargo supplies to the light rail on the top, doubled as a handhold. Probably one of the biggest features of Dragon are the touch screens on the inside. We designed them not just to be very functional, but with a user experience in mind. It's very intuitive to know what we need to do at any given moment in time. When I think about comfort for the astronauts, it's really every aspect of how you could interact with the spaceship that comes to mind. We have 3 different seat sizes. We even go so far as molding the foam around the astronaut's body so that there's not any pressure points, and it's just generally a pleasurable journey to space. Dragon is a spaceship that's all about safety and reliability. We designed it to be 2-fault tolerant, which means that any 2 things could fail. So I could lose a flight computer and a thruster, and I could still bring the crew back home safely. We also added a launch escape system. If anything goes wrong on ascent, the crew can get away from Falcon and get picked up safely. I've worked on Dragon since 2012. When I see Dragon lift off, I think I'm going to feel a buildup of emotion of 8 years of working with some of the best engineers and technicians across the country that put their heart and mind into making this incredible moment happen for everybody.
Ingress has started on schedule.
We see them signing. Looks like they're signing something in there right now.
Yeah, we give them a black Sharpie to sign the white room. It's starting a new tradition.
Yeah, we didn't do that. That's nice.
That's
It's a
awesome.
good tradition.
Yeah.
And while we were in the video, we saw Bob and Doug walk down the crew access arm. Leland, it's like that, futuristic look that you talked about. I mean, what did you think seeing that and how that kind of compare and contrast what that was like during shuttle?
You know, it's really beautiful, I think. I mean, back when I was flying on shuttle, everything looked. Oh, look at the thumbs up from Bob. He's getting excited. Just a few little photos at the end there, but it's just a totally different era. I mean, the SpaceX team is really looking to make something futuristic. It's looking like something from the George Jetsons or from other movies that you've seen on television and at the movies. And I think it's something that inspires our country and inspires our children especially to see that they want to be these astronauts. They want to study hard and be that next generation of explorers launching from Cape Canaveral in a SpaceX rocket, or working for NASA, or working for SpaceX, or any of the other companies that are trying to get off planet. And I think that this change in the way that we're doing business is going to be a really great way of getting more people to the table to fly in space.
Yeah, that was really important to us. Dragon, we see it as a 21st century spaceship. It needs to look like a 21st century spaceship. It flies like a 21st century spaceship. So of course, the ground support equipment should look like it's from the same era. The suits do. All of that sort of future-facing technology and aesthetic is super important to us. Actually, right now, you can see that duct in the hands of member number 5 there. That is an ECS duct, or Environmental Control System duct. Once this original, who just went in? Was that Doug or Bob?
I think that was Doug.
Okay, Doug
That was
just climbed
Doug,
in.
yeah.
That is awesome.
He's ahead of schedule. Somebody tell him to climb back
They
out.
are booking. It is great.
He's ready. He's like Leland. We were joking earlier about it. We were going to have to buckle Leland into his seat here to keep him from running out there.
Yeah, if we had stayed outside, I was going to swim across the moat and run over and get in the vehicle with Bob and Doug.
All right,
But
now Bob's going in.
yeah.
This is great. So the suit technicians are helping the crew climb inside. They're holding back the hatch seals to protect the seals on the hatch, but also making sure that the crew doesn't hit their head or anything on the way in. Even though they have helmets, we still don't want that to happen.
And they climbed in a couple minutes earlier than we expected them to, but Lauren, that SpaceX has rehearsed this over and over and over again with Bob and Doug, and and I've heard them say, well, we might be a little bit ahead of schedule if we're ready. It just gives them more time to check things out.
Yeah. So right now, what the crew, the suit technicians are doing is they're strapping the crew's feet into these restraints that the boots sit inside of. They're then going to close those 5-point harnesses around them. I know, Leland, you talked about some of the harnessing that you had in the past with the shuttle.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a more sleek design where there's one point to plug in to get cooling, communications, and everything. And we had a 5-point harness. We, had these hoses and things all over the place. But I think this is a much more streamlined look into the future of space travel.
And similar to what was going in the ONC building during the suit checkouts, that seat umbilical is going to connect to the right thigh of the spacesuit. There is a fluid module that is connected to the spacesuit, and that provides fresh cooling air and also nitrox for the leak checks that are going to come up later. But the audio system is also going through that umbilical. So while the crew while the suit techs are getting the crew all buckled in, they're going to perform a comm check. And that's, again, similar to what was done at the ONC building, but this time the integrated two-way communications between the astronauts and the ground crew.
And we're going to head back to Hawthorne now, as we just saw Bob and Doug ingress Crew Dragon. Dan?
Hey, thanks. Yeah, it's incredible to see them inside the capsule. If you're just now tuning in, great timing. You're watching our coverage of the mission known as Demonstration Mission 2 or Demo 2. Today, SpaceX and NASA are going to be sending people into orbit on a mission to the International Space Station for the first time from U.S. soil since 2011. Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley are those astronauts flying in Dragon. They're inside. That's Doug Hurley really close to our screen and Bob Behnken on the further seat away from us.
And they are getting ready to lift off from pad 39A, where Falcon 9 will lift off around or at 4:33 p.m. Eastern Time. They already ascended the tall structure next to the rocket, which is called the fixed service structure, and walked down the corridor known as the crew arm. And now they're already boarded inside of Dragon.
Yeah, right before they got in, we did see them pause for a moment and actually sign the wall. They were in the white room. And the white room is just literally that room at the end of the crew arm that has an opening into Dragon. It's the last place on planet Earth where Bob and Doug are standing before they get into Dragon for their ride to the space station.
And the term the White Room was first used during NASA Gemini missions, where the room right before entering into the spaceship was painted white. So we've continued the tradition with painting ours white as well, and also started a new tradition. If you just saw, they did sign the White Room wall, which is really, really awesome. It's a fairly small area that has room for the crew and a few ground support members to complete cargo load at T-minus 24 hours and crew ingress at T-minus 2 hours and 35 minutes. And ingress is how we refer to the crew boarding Dragon.
And inside the White Room, there's also a movable platform that just gets extended out to the capsule just in order to bridge that gap between the crew arm and the Dragon side hatch, just allowing easy entry into Dragon. And as you might expect, the entire area is environmentally controlled just so the Dragon side hatch can be kept open while we're keeping all of that dust, dirt, Florida humidity out of the capsule, making sure it's pristine for the crew. There's also a big seal that's inflated and compressed against the capsule right now just to help maintain that clean environment.
The White Room also has lots of tools in order to open the side hatch, complete crew ingress as they're doing right now, and prepare for any contingency or emergency that may be encountered.
And so as we just heard from Lauren and Marie and the team, they're getting into this capsule now. They're getting their seats connected to their suits via that umbilical that's going to give them hardline connections into audio for their comm checks, which are going to be coming up shortly. And again, breathing gas and pressurized nitrox for those suit leak checks. So this will be the second time since getting suited up that they've done these leak checks. We're just kind of all about redundancy and constantly checking our systems as we continue to count down. But I mean, there they are. Right now, we're watching Bob and Doug getting into Dragon, getting strapped in. Before they connected their suits to the actual seats, they did something called a foreign object debris check, or a FOD check. And that just means that they actually get inspected for any substance or debris on their suit that could interfere with those systems on Dragon.
And to help protect against debris, the crew has covers on their boots as well as their umbilical port on their suits that need to be removed before they can ingress. So they've already removed those, and as you can see, they are getting strapped in. And once the FOD check is complete, our commander, Doug Hurley, entered first, and then Bob Behnken followed after him. And they're getting buckled in right now, as you can see on your screen, and attaching their umbilicals to their suits. The umbilicals allow the crew to have comms through their suit and air to help keep them cool, as well as delivers nitrox for suit pressurization. And as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, the suit's primary function is to protect the crew in the event of a cabin depressurization.
And just walking through the interior a little bit, there are 4 seats configured inside Dragon right now. They're numbered 1 to 4 from right to left when you're looking at the seats. So we've had a couple of camera views just from the hatchway, so in the White Room, if you're looking at that angle, you go from 1 to 4 right to left. Doug Hurley is in seat 2, or the commander seat. Bob Behnken is in seat 3, which is on Crew Dragon is the pilot seat. And then obviously nobody is in seats 1 and 4 today. Crew Dragon is designed to carry 4 astronauts on these future NASA missions, and we met 2 of the Crew 1 members and heard about their other 2 crew members a little bit earlier. Directly in front of both of our crew members today are 3 touchscreen displays that they're going to use throughout the flight, giving them insight into Dragon systems, seeing any alerts or issues with the vehicle, and if required, taking control and manually flying Dragon. We can see Doug Hurley manipulating those displays right now.
And coming up, the crew will do a comm check to make sure that they can hear mission control, and their seats will be rotated into position for launch so that they can see those display panels right in front of them. So now let's check in with John Insprucker for the latest on the health of both vehicles. Over to you, John.
We're at T-minus 2 hours, 36 minutes, 30 seconds in the countdown for the launch of Falcon 9 with Dragon to the space station. The Dragon launch ops team has completed their major activities to prepare the spacecraft for the astronauts. Checkouts are complete of major systems, including the escape system. And as you can see, ingress of the astronauts well underway. They're hooking their suits up to the various cabin systems. Right now on Dragon, there are no issues in work. Comm checks will be coming up shortly on the Dragon spacecraft with the crew. We might be able to hear some of that, and we'll bring it to you as it happens. Now currently the Falcon 9 team is preparing for their final checkouts and propellant load. Checkouts are due to begin at T-minus 2 hours. That's when the majority of the launch crew will actually get on console officially in Flight Room 4 at Kennedy Space Center. Currently on Falcon 9, all systems are go. The Air Force Range continues to report no problems with air and sea space clearance. Everything's looking good. Roadblocks are up around the launch pads. The weather forecast continues to be acceptable, but something we're going to watch all the way through. We're not only looking at weather at the launch site, but we are looking around the world. We need to make sure conditions are acceptable if Dragon has to splash down in the Atlantic in case of an escape. We're also monitoring contingency splashdown locations if the crew had to come back to Earth before docking with the space station. Right now, those conditions are getting better as we go through the day. At the launch pad, things continue to be a 60% probability of violating the conditions, or 40% chance if you're an optimist of good weather. But right now, the clock is continuing to count down. All systems are go. We're just inside T-minus 2 hours, 35 minutes.
All right, now as Bob and Doug finish their ingress procedures and get comfortable inside Dragon, we're going to continue to listen for those comm checks. They should be coming up in just a little bit. But right now, I'm joined now by SpaceX's Jessica Jensen and Lars Blackmore just to discuss a little bit more about what make Dragon and Falcon 9 a 21st century launch vehicle. So first off, thank you so much for joining me today. Jessica, I'll start with you.
Yeah.
Walk me through kind of Dragon's life history and how we got to where we are today.
Sure. So Dragon was designed from scratch 12 years ago by SpaceX. It was designed to carry cargo to and from the International Space Station. And what that means is 12 years ago wasn't that long ago. So we got to use state-of-the-art materials, state-of-the-art, computer processors. So really, Dragon, to start off with, is already a modern advanced spacecraft. But then there's two other parts of it also that really led to commercial crew. One part of it was that we actually were able to man-rate cargo Dragon while it's in the vicinity of the space station and attached to the space station. So that was a huge learning curve for crew. We human-rated a spacecraft for a portion of the mission, and then for crew, you just have to obviously expand it for the whole mission. And then the last part was Cargo Dragon has been this amazing test bed for commercial crew. And what that means is we were able to test out things like heat shield materials and parachute materials on Cargo Dragon before they ever flew on Crew Dragon.
Very cool. And that's just one part of the equation. Lars, walk us through, again, just the flight history of Falcon 9 from the humble beginnings to where we are today.
Well, Falcon 9 first flew almost 10 years ago today. And even though the first version of that rocket couldn't carry humans, the fundamental design was made with that goal in mind. Over the course of 87 launches, we've steadily improved the rocket so that now it has twice the payload to orbit that we started out with. We can land and reuse the first stage in the fairing, and most importantly for today, we have the reliability that we need for humans. Now, what's interesting is that reliability has come from steady upgrades and almost a decade of flight experience, but it's actually quite hard to prove reliability. This is something that the commercial airline industry has been grappling with for decades. And just like them, we rely on lots and lots of testing. So, for instance, if you take the Merlin 1D engine, that has to fly for about 6 minutes continuously to get to orbit. We took one of those and ran it for more than 250 minutes to get the statistical proof of reliability that we need. So it's that testing and lots of analysis that gives us and NASA the confidence that Falcon is ready to fly humans for the first time.
And obviously a lot of additional upgrades, a lot of additional testing had to go just to make sure that both of these vehicles were human rated. So walk us through some of the specific upgrades to Dragon to meet that criteria.
Yep. So the first one's pretty obvious. We had a Cargo Dragon. It has lots of cargo cubbies, so we took all of those out, replaced it with astronaut seats, crew displays, and crew controls. But one thing that people may not know is on Cargo Dragon, we've actually been flying mice to and from the International Space Station for years. And what that meant was we had to design an environmental control and life support system for Dragon years ago. It provides oxygen, it scrubs carbon dioxide, and among other things, it controls temperature and relative humidity. So even though that was done on a smaller scale for mice, it was a great learning curve on how to help man-rate a spacecraft when you have to do it for humans.
And then, Lars, same question. What kind of specific upgrades had to go into it to certify Falcon 9 for this day?
Well, I already mentioned the reliability upgrades. One upgrade that I think is particularly interesting is the launch abort trigger. So people probably know that Dragon has the ability in mid-flight to separate from Falcon and boost the astronauts away to safety in the case that there's some kind of emergency. And that could be triggered by the astronauts or by the ground crew. What people may not know is that Falcon itself has the ability to cause that trigger. And it will do that entirely autonomously using algorithms, software, and sensors. And that's particularly important in the case of a time-critical fault, where aborting quickly means aborting safely. And in some cases, Falcon can do this quicker than 3/10 of a second, so much faster than a human.
And Lars, I'm going to pause right there for a sec. We're getting some comm from the crew. And so coming up shortly, we're going to hear these communication checks. Bob and Doug are going to be talking to several positions down on the ground, and they're going to be using both communication speakers inside of Dragon and inside their suits in a series of communications checks. They're also going to be doing these checks over different satellites and ground stations.
CDR, PLT, comm check, umbilical.
CDR, loud and clear. PLT, loud and clear.
Core, loud and clear. Umbilical, comm check complete. Stand by for ground station comm check.
And you'll hear him referred to CDR as Doug Hurley, that's the commander, PLT pilot, that's Bob Behnken. And so that first one we heard was through the umbilical, so that communication linked directly into their suit. Now they're going to do a communication check over the ground stations. We'll also hear one over TDRS, that's the tracking and data relay satellites. Same satellites we use to talk to the International Space Station, that's what we'll be using to talk and track Dragon throughout its entire flight. So again, just waiting for a moment for the teams to continue configuring everything. They're going to do these ground checkouts now, and you're going to be hearing them talk directly to the core. It's the crew operations responsible engineer. That's essentially the Capcom if you followed NASA missions in the past. It's a position right here in Hawthorne at SpaceX Mission Control, which is just a few feet away from us, where the team's going to be watching over Bob and Doug for their entire flight. That's where the main person whose job it is to talk to them is going to be sitting. We'll also hear them do some checkouts with the launch director down there at the Cape inside firing room 4. And you'll be hearing those very characteristic beeps.
Dragon SpaceX comm check.
SpaceX Dragon, weak but readable.
Copy, we have you the same. Stand by, we're still configuring for ground station comm check.
Dragon copy.
And just to further explain some of those voice protocols that you're going to hear, you might be used to hearing Houston Station or Houston Shuttle or Houston Endeavor back when we were flying those specific shuttles. You're going to hear SpaceX Dragon. That's the SpaceX team calling the Dragon team on orbit. And then Bob and Doug will be able to respond. And so they're going to continue to configure. We'll get these ground station checkouts momentarily. And just a reminder, you're going to hear that very unique beeping sound. That's called a quindar, and that's been something that's been used throughout space-to-ground or air-to-ground communications throughout spaceflight history, and that's really just for teams who are in mission control or supporting the launch know when you hear that sound, it's time to listen.
Dragon SpaceX comm check, ground station.
Dragon has a loud and clear, much better, Jay.
And core, loud and clear. Ground station comm check complete. Stand by for TDRS comm check. Dragon and SpaceX, com check, Tidris.
SpaceX Dragon, loud and clear.
Core, loud and clear. Tidris, com check complete. Stand by for checks with MD, LD in the launch configuration.
Dragon, MD on countdown 1, com check.
Jason, we've got you loud and clear. How you doing?
Doing great. How you guys doing in there? Stand by for com checks.
Great day to launch a spaceship.
Agree. And stand by for com checks over Dragon to ground. Dragon, MD on Dragon to ground, com check.
Loud and clear.
MD, loud and clear. Stand by for com checks with LD.
Dragon, launch director on countdown 1, com check.
Mike, we've got you loud and clear. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Let me try on Dragon to ground 1. Dragon, SpaceX launch director on Dragon to ground 1, com check.
Loud and clear.
Have you the same?
Dragon, SpaceX, launch configuration com checks are complete. Report when ready for seat rotation per section 2 of 4.100.
SpaceX Dragon, we're ready for seat rotation.
Copy, ready for seat rotation. We will report when initiating.
All right, so that wraps up those communications checks. Everything going good with the spacecraft. Bob and Doug talking to the teams on the ground. Pretty soon they're going to get their seats rotated. Bringing you back inside Hawthorne real quick, I do want to thank Jessica and Lars for joining me real quick, giving us that great insight into Dragon and Falcon 9. Hope you guys got a good spot staked out to watch a launch today. It's great to have you on.
Absolutely.
Super excited.
So we're going to throw it now down to Gary Jordan at Mission Control Houston, who I know is also following along. Over to you, Gary.
Thanks, Dan. Great to hear good checks from Bob and Doug in the Dragon vehicle. Now, I do want to make a shout out that it's not just the flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston that have dedicated so much time to this launch. In fact, I've been talking to Zeb Scoville, the flight director here in Mission Control Houston, who said that even before he was a flight director back in 2014, they were working on some of the operations for commercial crew missions. But really, this team expands across the country. You've already seen a lot of people working in Hawthorne, in Florida, in Houston, and really it takes an integrated and dedicated team to make a mission like this possible. Diana, thank you so much for the question. And really thanks to everyone sending in questions and for sharing in this historic mission today. Remember, as you're posting, to use the hashtag #LaunchAmerica. I do want to make a shout out to the flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston. In fact, some traditional flowers have been sent to Mission Control Houston. This dates even back before the shuttle days for every mission to dedicate it to the operations and the controllers here who are working so closely and are integrated in every part of the mission. But now let's head over to Hawthorne for the latest status on the crew and on Dragon. Dan.
All right, thank you, Gary. As you can see, Bob and Doug in a little bit different position now. Their suits have been rotated to the launch position. So this just puts their backs a little bit more horizontal with the ground itself, or parallel with the ground itself, and places those displays directly in front of them. We've also already moved into suit leak checks, so this is the second time they've had these leak checks done in their suit. So pressurized nitrox now flowing into those launch and entry suits that they're going to be wearing throughout the dynamic phases of this mission. So right now we are under 2 hours and 20 minutes from launch. We're about 2 hours and 18 minutes and counting from liftoff of the Falcon 9 from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. It's going to be carrying our NASA crew members today, Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken, aboard SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft. It's been a really exciting day so far. We're fighting against that weather, but we're continuing to press on for launch. The crew has been up since about 6 a.m. as they prepare to head to the International Space Station for part of this Demo 2 mission for NASA.
Yeah, and as you can see on your screen, it looks like they're just waiting and getting ready for this mission today. It's been such an exciting day so far. Again, as Dan said, their seats are rotated into launch position so that they can see those screens that you see there on the left side right in front of them. Their suit leak checks have been complete. Their comm checks are complete. So let's throw it over to Lauren in KSC.
All right, so Dragon hatch close is expected at T-minus 1 hour and 55 minutes, and we are just pretty close to that. It's getting really, really close. So this is one of the the final key visual milestones on that timeline to lift off, the closure of that hatch and locking Bob and Doug inside. Now, we have a couple of special guests joining us with Daryl at the OSB-2 viewing location. That's NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine and SpaceX Chief Engineer Elon Musk. Daryl?
That's right, Lauren. We're here on the 5th floor. We were supposed to be outside on the balcony overlooking pad 39A, but we have come indoors due to the weather. But we are here with two titans of space. And though it might look like this is a reunion of a 90s boy band, it is not. We are socially distanced for good reason. But we are here to talk about space. And I want to thank you both and tell you both it's a privilege and honor to be with you today. We're going to start off with you, Jim, and ask you a couple questions here. I want to ask you, first of all, it's been almost 3 years that you were sworn in as NASA Administrator, and you knew from the very first day that you would be right here at the Kennedy Space Center in this moment when a commercial partner was ready to launch. Tell me what it's like to be leading NASA at this very moment.
So I want to be clear. I did not know that when I got sworn in. I will tell you, a lot of folks said it couldn't be done. But of course, as soon as I got the job, Elon and I have had a number of conversations. Elon committed that this was something that SpaceX could achieve. We've had challenges. We've had setbacks. We've seen catastrophic losses of capsules and challenges with parachutes. What's that? On the ground. On the ground, uncrewed. I want to be really clear. Tests. But that's what's unique about SpaceX. SpaceX can do things that NASA historically has not done. They test, they fail, they fix, they fly, they test, they fail, they fix, they fly, until the point where we are today, where not only is SpaceX comfortable, but NASA is comfortable. We are ready to go. But if you would have told me even 2 years ago we'd be right here, I might have even been questioning it then. But this is a monumental achievement. It's a Herculean task by the SpaceX team, which we're very grateful for, and also by the NASA team that has been working hand in glove with them to get to this point.
And it's good we have Jim and Elon both here to fact check each other, so that's good. Thank you for that. Elon, in 2002, when you started SpaceX, many in the aerospace industry didn't take SpaceX seriously. You remember what that felt like. Yet here you are, you just sent 2 astronauts in a car made by your car company to launch pad 39A with a spacecraft made by your space company. And now they're launching the International Space Station. So I'm wondering for you, in this moment, do you just pinch yourself thinking, is this really happening?
This is a dream come true, I think, for me and everyone at SpaceX. This is not something that I ever thought would actually happen. So when starting SpaceX in 2002, I really did not think this day would occur. I expected 90% chance we'd fail to even get to low Earth orbit with a small rocket. So if somebody told me in 2002 that I'd be standing here with the NASA administrator, meeting the astronauts, and we've got a rocket and spacecraft on pad 39A, the best pad in the world, which is, it's an honor to be there, I would have thought, man, I don't know what you're smoking, but it's not. like no way is that true. You know, and so it is. Say it's even a dream come true. I didn't even dream that this would come true. Let me put it that way. You know, but it is. I am incredibly excited to be here on behalf of the SpaceX team. And as Jim said, this really is the culmination of an incredible amount of work by the SpaceX team, by NASA, and by a number of other partners in the process of making this happen. It's really, you can look at this as the results of 100,000 people, roughly, when you add up all suppliers and everyone, working incredibly hard to get to make this day happen. So it's really hard to believe that this is real.
And you're here, and it's amazing, and many of us have been amazed as we've watched you accomplish these things over the years. Jim, back to you. This is all about the commercialization of space. And so in the early going for Commercial Crew Program, it wasn't something NASA was used to. You know, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Shuttle, NASA gave the designs and the contractors went out there and built it. This is different.
It is.
They're building it now. What were some of the hurdles that you had to overcome to get to this point?
Well, I think getting people to recognize that when the government provides both the demand and the supply, you're limited in what you're able to do. And of course, back when this program was initiated under Charlie Bolden, General Charlie Bolden, astronaut Charlie Bolden, Congress was not supportive and did not provide the proper funding. And yet he persevered, he pushed forward. And now I think everybody recognizes we have to commercialize space. We've had success now with commercial resupply of the International Space Station. Now we've got commercial crew to the International Space Station. Eventually we need commercial space stations. So what we're using the International Space Station for right now, we're proving that we can compound pharmaceuticals in a way that you cannot do on Earth. We're able to create immunizations in a way you cannot do on Earth. We're printing human organs in 3D. Right now it's just tissue, but eventually we're going to print human organs in 3D using adult stem cells, your skin cells, your own DNA. It's going to transform how we do medicine here on Earth. We're creating advanced materials that you can only create in the microgravity of space, things like an artificial retina for the human eye. So if you have macular degeneration, you don't have to lose your eyesight. Bottom line is this: these markets are the future. And when they materialize, and they are materializing because of the work of NASA, we're going to see capital investment, not just into launch, but also into habitation. And that ultimately is what's going to be transformational for commercial space.
Very good. And Elon, in getting all of that going, the ISS and all the activity that takes place on board, it's key that this Crew Dragon operate on a regular basis. As the chief engineer, yes, what were some of the biggest hurdles you had to overcome to get your spacecraft ready to fly this mission?
Well, the spacecraft and the rocket have gone through literally thousands and thousands of tests and reviews, both by SpaceX, by NASA, by third parties. We've also, as Jim was alluding to, we've done a lot of flights. So one of the things I think that's very helpful about this flight, about what we're about to do, is that the rocket has flown many times. Mm-hmm. In fact, even in this, essentially this configuration, it's flown about 20 times. Mm. So that means we really have, and I don't want to tempt fate, but a well-proven rocket. And we've flown Crew Dragon to the space station once successfully and brought it back. We've done a tremendous amount of testing on the ground, and when you do the testing on the ground, you always push the limits. Mm-hmm. So you want to try, you push it way beyond what you'd expect in flight. So sometimes you'd break it because you kind of want to break it on the ground during testing to see what the limits are. Mm-hmm. So this is a result, like I said, of thousands of tests, of thousands of design hours, and a tremendous number of smart people working incredibly hard to make this day happen.
And you've got 2 astronauts on board now. Yes. Do you feel that responsibility?
Yes, absolutely. I felt it, I think, most strongly when I saw their family just before coming here.
And did you say anything that you can share?
I said we've done everything we can to make sure your dad's come back okay.
Thanks for sharing that with us. Jim, you had some words with the astronauts. What was your take on how they were feeling?
I will tell you, Doug Hurley, Marine Corps test pilot, of course, veteran of multiple space shuttle missions. Bob Behnken, flight test engineer, United States Air Force, again, veteran of multiple space shuttle missions. This is not new to these guys. All I could do is convey to them how much all of America appreciates what they're doing. That the entire world is watching, and just how grateful we are as a nation. And I will tell you, their demeanor is loose. They are ready to go. They were joking around. They're talking about what they had for breakfast and how it might come up later. It was
steak and eggs. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Right. So it was nice to see. They are in their element, and we are just so grateful and proud of them.
Well, that's good to hear. That gives you great confidence, I'm sure. And your positions as you hear that. We're going to go to a social media question, and we've got this question coming from Brooklyn. And she wants to know, I noticed some changes in the crew spacesuits. They look much thinner and lighter. What changes in the space capsule allow to have these futuristic suits?
Well, we spent a lot of time designing the spacesuit. I personally spent a lot of time on the spacesuits. It took us 3, almost 4 years to design suits that both look good and work well. So you can see a spacesuit in the movie, looks good, doesn't work. and then you can make a spacesuit that works but then doesn't look good. Because fundamentally it's a pressure suit that's got to survive in vacuum.
Right.
So it's so it tends to puff up, when it's under pressure, and it's got to handle all that pressure. So it took us many iterations to get the suit to. We really wanted to look great. Fundamentally, what it's about is like we want to inspire kids to say that one day they want to wear that uniform, they want to wear that spacesuit, and get them fired up about, I want to be an astronaut. I want to work on aerospace engineering. I want to advance space flight. And I think what today is about is reigniting the dream of space, and getting people fired up about the future and excited. It's just one of those things that I think everyone. From all walks of life, from all parts of the political spectrum, in the United States and elsewhere, should be really excited that this is a thing that is made by humans, for humans, and it's just a great, exciting, inspiring day, and it's one of those, like I said, one of those things that makes you glad to wake up in the morning.
Yeah. Functional and inspiring. And there's one on a model right over there, and you got me so excited, I might run over there and put that thing on, Elon.
Yeah. They're custom tailored, by the way.
They are.
So
it's not gonna fit
I
me.
think you won't fit in that one, but we could make one that you would fit in.
Well, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, because I'm 6'8", so you're gonna have to do a lot of sewing.
Well, and the Dragon spacecraft can take someone who's 6'8".
My size.
Yes.
This commercial thing, I'm getting excited.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm ready to fly, Jim.
Yeah.
Sir.
We've got another social media question we're going to ask. Ashton J wants to know, how do you think that launching astronauts on American soil for the first time since 2011 will revolutionize future missions?
Yeah, so what we're doing here is unlike anything we've ever done before. We are not purchasing, owning, and operating the hardware. We are turning to commercial industry. And going back to the spacesuits, it's the same for the capsule, it's the same for the rocket. We did not tell industry what to build. We gave them top-level requirements. We said, here's the requirement for payload. Here's the requirement for safety. And then we let the innovators, commercial industry, American commercial industry, innovate. And they came up with solutions that had never been dreamed of before. And that's the success of this program. So we're really revolutionizing how we do spaceflight. And I really think when we look into the future, we're going to see these models of doing business with public-private partnerships apply not just to low Earth orbit, which is what we're doing today, but we're taking this model to the moon and even onto Mars.
And I hear something about Tom Cruise shooting a movie at the International Space Station. Is that right?
I'll tell you what I told Elon just yesterday, and that is this. People ask me about Tom Cruise all the time now, and the answer is yes. We would love Tom Cruise to fly to the International Space Station and make a movie. I'm all for that, and we're going to do what we can to make that happen. But you should know this. There was a day when I was in elementary school, and I saw the movie Top Gun. And from that day, I knew that I was going to be a Navy pilot. It's just the way it was. The goal here, and this is what we're doing today.
Exactly.
And Elon is all about this.
Get the kids fired up about
Get 'em excited.
wanting to wear that spacesuit,
That's exactly
wanting to
right.
fly that, go to orbit, go to the moon, go to Mars, reigniting the dream of space, and just getting, people of all walks of life, young, old, excited about the future. Excited. I think anyone who has within them the spirit of exploration should love what's going on today.
And if we can
Absolutely.
get Tom Cruise to inspire an elementary kid to join the Navy and be a pilot, why can't we get Tom Cruise to inspire the next Elon Musk? That's what we need. We need a new generation of many Elon Musks, and that's what this launch is about today. I want to say, speaking of this inspiration piece, it's not by chance that we have the Secretary of Education of the United States of America here. This is all about the next generation. If we have great success in our generation, it's not enough. It has to continue. The challenge with the Apollo program is that it ended. What we're doing now is sustainable, and that's why we have the public-private partnerships and commercial capabilities that are coming online.
Very good. And the good news for Tom Cruise is he does a lot of his own stunts.
Yeah.
So in zero
Absolutely.
gravity, he should get hurt a lot
No,
less,
I think it's going to be super cool.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah,
and as Joe said, it's like this is going to, you want to capture the public imagination, have them see cool things happening in real orbit, real space stations. It's like I think I'd want to watch that movie.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, you think it was like this is really just the beginning, because we want to go from low Earth orbit. We want to go back to the moon, and the moon to stay, have a moon base like Moon Base Alpha, and have build a city on Mars and be a spacefaring civilization out there among the stars. This is a super exciting future that I think that's the kind of thing where you're like, can't wait for it to happen.
If you can't get excited after listening to you guys, I'd say you need to have your pulse checked.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, SpaceX CEO and Chief Engineer, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jim Bridenstine, we appreciate you leading NASA in this time, Administrator for the agency. And we're going to send it back to Marie.
All right, thanks a lot, Daryl. We saw in the meantime, while that interview was going on, the hatch actually closed. So that happened a few minutes earlier than we expected to. Our timeline has that happening at T-minus an hour and 55 minutes. So a few minutes ahead of schedule right now with hatch close. And you can see the pad teams there just working on things now.
Yeah, right now it looks like what they're doing is, what are they doing? So they perform a leak check. There's a mechanism there called a side hatch mechanism. That is what actually closes the hatch and seals it. And what we'll do is perform a leak check on that for a few minutes to make sure that that's nice and tight, that those O-rings are sealed really, really well. And after that, we will install the, you can see the leak check ground support equipment there in the technician's hands there.
And while we're watching this, Leland, I mean, we just heard them talk a lot about inspiring the next generation. And you're a man of many talents. I know after your flights yourself, you used to head the head of NASA education. I mean, what did that stir up in you?
Marie, what Elon said about reigniting the dream of space is so important, that we get our young kids thinking about themselves being in these seats. And when I first became an astronaut in 1998, I was riding on the back of a fire truck celebrating John Glenn's return to flight on a space shuttle. And I saw these two little kids. They had on orange pumpkin suits. And when their dad turned them around to look at me on the fire truck. And it was almost as though when they saw my face, they started launching into space with rocket fuel because they were inspired, because they saw someone who looked like them. And I think that if we can reignite this dream through SpaceX's launch, through the partnership with NASA, we can get so many more kids to believe in themselves and know that they can be just like Doug and Bob flying on the SpaceX Dragon.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really just breathtaking to see them there in their suits now and looking at the screens in front of them. Lauren, I know we've talked a lot about the spacecraft. We've heard about that. But for folks that maybe are just tuning in, what are they looking at in front of them now?
Yeah, so they have 3 different touch screens in front of them. Overall, that whole assembly there is called the control panel. So you'll have those 3 LCD touch screens in front of them where the displays are showing them details on the vehicle's pressure, its temperature, there's audio control. That center screen has the procedures that they're going through today on day of launch. You can also see the vehicle's attitude. You can see its velocity, its apogee, its perigee, its inclination, details on the status of the hatch, the thermal control system loops, basically all the cool stuff that helps them have situational awareness of the vehicle. That's displayed on those displays. Additionally, there are some actual buttons on that button panel that you see down below. And some of the things that allow them to do is if the crew ever needed to do any sort of manual overrides like that right in the middle, right underneath that center LCD screen, that's the crew's ability to initiate an abort. It's called an abort handle, and it's right in the middle where both crew members could use it if they needed to. And the audio controls are also on those button panels. When they're not in their suits, there's actually speakers that are coming off of the control panel that allow them to hear mission control, hear the core, hear ISS, when they're not in their suits where the audio systems are integrated into that.
And we see them using the touch screens now. Leland, what's your take on this? Because this has got to look totally different from what you were looking at during shuttle.
touch screens. I mean, we had these these displays and these buttons, and you know, it was one of those moments when I'm looking at this now, when I had knee boards that had procedures and things on there, and the procedures are now all run in that middle screen, and the malfunctions and the things that you do to mitigate problems with the vehicle if something happens, it's all controlled right there with the two of them. And so it's a radical departure from what we did with the shuttle, but it's again ushering in this new era of space travel.
For post-ingress brief and a check on how that suit air feels about now.
And we're going to listen now for an announcement about hatch closer.
Copy. Well, today we are not tracking any issues on Dragon and F9 currently. For a weather update, the weather line that is overhead, which is what you saw when you were ingressing, is now moving offshore. The next radar return is a cell over Orlando, which is expected to be our decision gate for today, and that is currently eroding.
That's good news. Thank you.
Copy. And then one additional item, the Cabo, the orbit site, remains as briefed, so no change there. But I do want to make you aware that that is slightly west of Cabo for go weather. So you just want to target the longitude if needed.
Okay, Dragon copy, slightly west. We'll target the longitude, and the suit air has cooled off, so we appreciate that as well.
Copy, outstanding. Let us know if you have any questions, and we'll keep you posted as the closeout team completes the leak check.
Dragon copy.
So what we actually heard was a little bit more discussion about the weather, still looking at things, and we're about a minute away from an announcement about hatch closure. Excuse me. If you're just joining us, we're at T-minus 1 hour, 55 minutes and counting, and we're expecting an announcement to confirm hatch closure in just a few seconds.
Dragon, SpaceX, for comm checks with Falcon 9.
Go ahead.
Okay, we are ready for that at that time, if you are ready.
We are ready.
All stations up on countdown net for section 54.49. F9 responsible engineer, communication check with the crew. Start with guidance, navigation, and control.
Dragon GNC on countdown 1, comm check.
GNC Dragon, loud and clear.
GNC loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the propulsion engineer.
Dragon, prop on countdown 1, comm check.
Prop Dragon, loud and clear.
Prop, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check with the avionics engineer.
Dragon, avionics on countdown 1, comm check.
Avionics Dragon, we have good loud and clear.
Avionics loud and clear. Stand by for comm check with the ground segment engineer.
Dragon, ground segment on countdown 1, comm check.
Ground segment Dragon, loud and clear.
Ground segment loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by launch control.
Dragon, launch control on countdown 1, comm check.
Launch control Dragon, loud and clear.
Launch control loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the chief engineer. Dragon, chief engineer on countdown 1, comm check.
Fala, Dragon has you loud and clear.
Chief Engineer, loud and clear. This completes the F9 responsible engineer comm checks. Dragon, Chief Engineer on Dragon to ground.
Go ahead, sir.
I was just doing a comm check on this loop. Good luck, guys, and buckle in.
Thanks to you and the F9 team, Bala. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bala.
So we just heard a series of comm checks there, and Lauren, I don't know if you want to describe a little bit more about why that's important, and we heard the acronym GNC. They said guidance, navigation, and control really quickly, and then went back to the acronym GNC. Can you kind of explain to folks what that means?
Yeah, the launch chief engineer, Bala, as you heard them thanking him towards the end, initiated a comm check with all of the different subsystems that those engineers that are on console and those operators today, and talking with the crew, making sure that they were able to communicate with them bidirectionally, and just handing that check off from all of the different stations on console today. That was really, really cool. We obviously don't do that when there's a satellite on top of the rocket, so this is the first time for a real flight that we've done that operation, which is very awesome.
And now that the hatch is closed, a lot of the work of this team is done, but I mean they're obviously not finished. They're not ready to leave the white room just yet. You were talking to some folks about what's going on in this room now.
Yeah, that's right. They should be completing the hatch leak check. That's you sort of pressurize that area between, there's two O-rings that are there, and we want to pressurize that area, see if it holds pressure. It's a very, very sensitive test, very high criteria for passing. And so once that leak check is shown to be okay, and that the capsule or that those O-rings are able to hold pressure, what the team will do is they'll go back into that area, into that access panel, and install what we call the SPEP, which is the side pressure equalization plug. Once that is plugged, you've really closed everything up. And when the crew splashes down, what they'll actually do is pull that plug to equalize pressure across the hatch so that you don't cause the hatch to buckle due to a pressure, or sorry, the hatch or the capsule, the weldment, any of the vehicle to buckle due to a pressure differential. So they should be adding that plug, and then they'll cover up that side hatch access panel with the TPS panel or thermal protection system panel, close it up, and that'll make sure it stays safe on ascent.
And now obviously we're looking at a view from the outside, the top of Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon.
We can confirm a good side hatch leak check.
Dragon copies, good leak check.
And we just heard confirmation of a good leak check. If you're just joining us, you're looking at the Falcon 9 rocket with Crew Dragon sitting on top. Inside that capsule on top are NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. And we are inside of 2 hours until liftoff, if the weather holds up. There's another stunning aerial view of the crew access arm extended out towards Crew Dragon. That is the final path that the astronauts took to climb aboard Dragon before they strapped into their seats and the hatch closed. And no doubt Bob and Doug are focused on the mission ahead, but you know, we also heard the administrator and Elon Musk talking about how they've been kind of jovial and joking around. And Leland, you kind of mentioned to me during that segment that that's really important.
It really is, Marie. When we were in the vehicle, after we got to this point when the hatch was closed, we were all going back to those moments of our training, you know, when we were going through, you know, ascent and entry training on the shuttle and just different phases of flight that we would be going through. And we would think about some of our instructors who got us there. You know, in our crew notebooks, we would have names of people that were very impactful in making sure that we were perfect in our training.
And that looks like a view of Air Force One, flying near Launch Pad 39A for a special guest to have a special view of the astronauts on the launch pad. President Trump on board, making his way to Kennedy Space Center to hopefully view a launch at 4:33 this afternoon. And there they are in view of the launch pad, so no doubt he's looking at the window, looking out the window at Bob and Doug on the pad. That's got to be an amazing sight to see from on board Air Force One. And we are at T-minus 1 hour, 46 minutes, 22 seconds and counting from launch. And guys, the last time we actually did a little bit of research when we found out that the president was coming. The last president to witness a launch from here at Kennedy Space Center was Bill Clinton. That was back in October 1998 for STS-95. So it's been a minute.
Hear any significant chatter coming over countdown one?
Yes, launch director in the countdown net. Poll is complete, and we have a go to proceed with propellant load. Launch control, proceed with swing into crew arm.
Arming crew arm movement for T-minus 45 minutes.
Thank you, launch control. A reminder in control room on hold and launch escape protocol. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief CE or LD, and it will approve aborting the launch auto sequence and proceed to launch abort. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. Operators shall also advise the launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. Remainder on fire alarm instructions. Here in Fire Room 4, in the event of a fire alarm, key operators, previously briefed, will remain at their post while the alarm is evaluated. In the event that personal safety is threatened, we will evacuate to the south-facing emergency exit, which leads directly outside. One final reminder. They'll be arming the launch escape system momentarily. Need all personnel, please stay in your seats from now through orbit insertion and Dragon separation from the second stage.
Crew access arm recheck has started.
And you've heard Mike Taylor, the SpaceX launch director, give instructions to the team. We've also just heard the call. The crew access arm retraction is underway. Great view from the camera inside the White Room as we see the arm moving away from the Dragon capsule. One of the major events necessary to get down to T0. The next one coming up will be arming of the escape system on the Dragon capsule. Now, right now, the next plan for Falcon 9, T-minus 35 minutes, we will begin loading propellant onto the first and second stages. Now, currently, Falcon 9's looking good, Dragon's looking good. The range continues to be go for launch in terms of the clearance around the launch pad, both the air and the sea space. Looking at the flight corridor, the ground stations, the NASA tracking and data relay satellites are ready to support, and we just continue to monitor the weather. Our team is getting constant updates. We're monitoring weather data sensors around the launch site, looking to make sure that we can get everything into the green position. The one that we're mostly looking at right now is how much rain we're going to get between now and liftoff. Whether it's just going to be mild precipitation that's within the rules for loading propellant, that's what the expectation is, but we're going to continue to watch that. So fingers crossed, but right now coming up at T-minus 43 minutes, 18 seconds and counting, Everything but the weather's go, and the weather is trending in the right direction. So we've got our fingers crossed here. At this time, we're going to send it back over to Kennedy Space Center as the action is picking up on the launch pad.
Thanks, John I. Now that countdown clock is continuing to tick, and we are 42 minutes and 46 seconds away from launch. Now, as you just saw, the crew arm retracted. That is the last major visual milestone before liftoff. And we should be hearing out on the net soon confirmation that the launch escape system is armed. When that happens, all 8 of the Super Draco throttle valves are opened, which means that those engines can ignite.
For section 7.
Okay. So that means those 8 throttle valves are opened, and if those Super Dracos needed to fire in order for Dragon to escape off of the pad, they could.
And so things running just a little bit ahead of schedule right now.
Field lead is complete.
Now, we just saw the crew access arm retract just a minute ago. We saw NASA astronauts Doug Hurley.
In 7.2, our visors are closed, and we're arming the launch escape system.
So we just heard the astronauts confirm that they are about to arm the launch escape system. That happens just before fueling begins, which we expect to happen in just a couple of minutes. We saw Bob and Doug suit up a little over 3 hours ago. Then we watched them drive out to Launch Complex 39A. They were assisted by the SpaceX ground team with Crew Dragon ingress. That happened a little before 2 o'clock this afternoon. And then we saw the spacecraft hatch close. And again, just a minute ago, we saw the crew access arm retract. We just heard that the crew armed the launch escape system. And in just a few minutes, we are going to hear the call that they have started propellant loading.
Launch escape system is verified armed.
So we just heard that verification that the launch escape system is armed.
We're switching to GN2.
And we are going to send it over to Hawthorne to take us through prop loading. Jesse?
From the parachutes to the launch escape system, SpaceX has designed Crew Dragon and Falcon 9 to be the safest launch vehicle ever flown. And joining us today, we have SpaceX's Nick Picone, who was our mission manager for our in-flight abort mission earlier this year and currently works on the Starlink team. Thanks for joining us, Nick.
Hey, Jesse. I'm here at the Launch and Landing Recovery Center with the recovery team and our Dragon ground operations team monitoring the launch.
Awesome. Can you tell us more about the critical safety features on this new version of Dragon?
Sure. So Dragon 2 was designed with long-term reuse and reliability in mind. So fundamentally, there are multiple layers of redundancy to any of the failure modes that we could conceive of, that NASA could conceive of when we were working to design and test this vehicle over the past few years. But in the event that we encounter an unforeseen failure mode or multiple failures which push us outside of our design space, Dragon also has backup systems and operational controls intended to keep Bob and Doug safe. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it today, but the launch escape system is the primary backup system that we have from the moment that the vehicle is here on pad being fueled all the way up until orbital insertion. At a high level, the launch escape system, in the event of a major Falcon anomaly or emergency, will terminate Falcon thrust, separate Dragon from Falcon, and it'll use Dragon's 8 Super Draco engines to quickly pull the vehicle away from any kind of Falcon anomaly.
And you talked a lot about the launch escape system. How exactly is that activated? Is it autonomous? Is it manually activated?
Definitely. So for this system to work as designed, you have to remember that the vehicle could be flying at hundreds or thousands of miles an hour through the lower atmosphere. So it's really important that it's extremely fast and highly reliable with very low chance of false positives. The Launch escape system fundamentally is set to look at a set of pre-programmed criteria which are on board the vehicle. Dragon and Falcon are looking at high rate telemetry, looking for abnormal vehicle dynamics, loss of communication between critical systems, or manual commanding. Our launch director and chief engineer, who you've heard a lot from today, are capable of sending a manual command to Dragon to initiate a launch escape. And Bob and Doug are also always able to actuate the launch escape handle and initiate a launch escape themselves as well. Now that the system is armed, all of this is currently active on the vehicle.
Wow, it sounds like there's a lot that goes into it. And we did have an in-flight abort test earlier this year to test this out. Can you tell us what we learned from that test?
Definitely. It was possibly the most flight-like test of an orbital class booster in history. It was a fully flight-like test using a full Falcon 9 rocket, which we had to knowingly destroy in order to get this fully integrated system. For folks who didn't get a chance to see it, the vehicle followed a normal crew launch trajectory. About a minute and a half into flight, we had Dragon autonomously trigger the launch escape system based on a reconfiguration of those triggers I was just talking about.
For propellant
And
load.
thankfully we had we continued through flight, had a successful parachute deployment and splashdown, and we did see Falcon rather spectacularly blow up about 10 seconds after separation. It's important to recognize that all of that happens from command to actual separation of the vehicle in under half a second.
Wow, yeah, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining us and talking through those details with us. Enjoy the launch today. So we're going to send it back to KSC with Lauren.
Thank you, Jesse. We are about a minute and a half away from propellant load. At T-minus 35 minutes, we should hear the call out on the nets that propellant load has started. So that's about a minute and 13 seconds away.
Hey, Marie and Lauren, I am getting goosebumps over here. It's just an exciting moment. When I was sitting in the vehicle, when we retracted everything, when all the prop was getting loaded up, I was just going through my crew notebook. I was thinking about, what my first step would be if there was a malfunction, because usually everything goes nominally when you fly to space, but you have to think about the things that you have to take care of, the first steps you have to take care of. And on my mission, I was calling out the abort calls, like if we had lost an engine, where would we go next, when the different abort calls around the country and around the world. So I think that's what those guys are probably thinking about now, and just really getting ready for this mission to go off.
Absolutely, and we're just now about 20 seconds from when we expect propellant loading to start. Again, that's fueling of the rocket.
All right, we're getting close. We should hear that call out any second now on the nets. So let's listen in.
Propellant load has started.
Fantastic. So prop load has started. We've started loading liquid oxygen on stage 1 and stage 2. And yeah, liquid oxygen and RP1, which is our rocket grade kerosene. So now that we are 34 minutes and 42 seconds away from the first launch of astronauts into orbit from American soil since 2011, we know that the launch escape system is armed, which happened just before fueling. Dragon prop load happened weeks ago, actually just a few miles down the road at what we call Dragon Land. And those propellants, which are MMH, or monomethyl hydrogen, that's our fuel, and NTO, or nitrogen tetroxide, that's our oxidizer, those not only feed the Draco engines that propel Dragon on orbit, but they also supply those 8 Super Draco engines of the launch escape system. So I have one right here, a little model. Oh, it doesn't come off the stand.
Don't break it, Lauren.
All right, I know, it's very nice. So as you can see, Dragon is actually broken up into 4 quads, and each quad has 2 of the Super Draco engines for a total of 8 of them. And as I mentioned, they are biprop engines. They have MMH and NTO as their oxidizer. Now, most abort systems from past space vehicles, I believe like Soyuz, Mercury, Apollo, they all had a pointy escape tower on top where there was essentially like a mini rocket engine or a series of rocket engines on top. And if they weren't used, that that escape tower would have to jettison itself from the vehicle. If it was used, it would be used to lift the vehicle off of the rocket. Well, Dragon is a little bit different in that its escape system is actually integrated into the vehicle, and that's great for a couple of reasons. One less thing you have to jettison on a nominal flight, and so they're pretty dormant, just those throttle valves open unless they're used, and hopefully they never have to be. And yeah, I mean, the other thing that offers you is the ability to escape from the pad all the way to orbit. Because if you jettisoned your escape system prior to that, you couldn't. So yeah, that's little Dragon there.
Again, new era, much safer design.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for walking us through that, Lauren. Again, the launch escape system is armed. That protects Bob and Doug so that if something were to go wrong, they can shoot off of the pad away from the rocket and parachute to safety in the ocean. That is such a crucial safety capability. And so now we want to go over to Hawthorne for an operational update with John.
Thanks, Marie. We are counting down those final minutes. Everything is still looking good on the Falcon 9 and the Dragon vehicles for an on-time launch, but weather is trending the wrong way right now. We're keeping our ears open in case we hear that the weather is going to be no-go for the rest of the count. Right now, we are counting down at T-minus 32 minutes.
Stage 1 locks and
Falcon
RP1
9 did
flow rates
begin
are nominal.
propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes, right on time. The propellants we use on Falcon 9 are a fuel, which is rocket-grade kerosene, also called RP1, refined petroleum. We use an oxidizer, and that's the super chilled liquid oxygen, or LOX as we call it. Those two propellants come together, but they don't light, so we need an ignition source to complete the fire triangle. For this, Falcon 9 uses a fluid called T-tub. You might see that just before first stage ignition, or maybe later in the second stage ignition. You get a green colored flame as the T-tub comes out into the oxygen, and that ignites the main engines right before the rocket takes off or the second stage engine lights. Now currently in the fueling, RP1 fuel is about 10% full on the first stage. That's the bottom 2/3 of the stack of the vehicle you can see on the left. The first stage is that long white cylinder at the bottom plus that black cylinder called the inner stage. That's the entire first stage that we're loading with LOX and RP1 kerosene. That's the part that comes back to Earth. The second stage just above it, the white cylinder, and then above that will be the Dragon trunk and the capsule. Now currently, the second stage is also loading fuel with RP1. That's about 8% full right now. We are loading liquid oxygen on the first stage. The second stage liquid oxygen load will begin at T-minus 16.5 minutes if the weather cooperates. So LOX loading will then continue on both the first and second stage until the last few minutes of the countdown. Helium loading is also underway into pressure vessels on the second stage. We use that to pressurize the tanks in flight as the propellant is being pulled out by the Merlin turbopumps. Dragon on board the spacecraft. You can see the astronauts are monitoring systems while propellant is loaded into the Falcon 9. Now when we
Stage 1
flew
cryo-helium load
the
has
first
started.
demo flight last year and then the in-flight escape test earlier this year, the sounds inside the Dragon capsule were recorded. So as part of the training, the sounds of the propellant loading were played back to acclimate the crew to what they're experiencing now. I'm listening to some discussion on one of the back nets, trying to track where we are with the weather criteria. We're just passing another weather gate right now, trying to see whether or not the conditions are go. In certain situations, when the weather is no-go, you have to wait 30 minutes, and we are now inside of 30 minutes. But if the cloud moves away, if the conditions improve, we may be able to continue the countdown for another 14 minutes and reassess. So we're waiting to see whether or not we can continue the count. Currently we are. The range, they're ready to support with no problems in the air and the sea space area. But again, the weather, that's the one that's looking bad, and we're going to continue to listen. And as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch time. So at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we're going to have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity on May 30th.
For
For Demo 2, Bob and Doug's flight to station will take about 19 hours, and their journey is fairly similar to the trip our cargo Dragon makes back and forth to the International Space Station, with two noticeable differences: docking and splashdown.
As we await T-0 in just a little over 28 minutes from now, ground operations teams just doing those final series of system checks, making sure both Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready for liftoff, and really keeping an eye on that weather. And you're just continuing to get live views of the teams. You've got Falcon 9 and Dragon on your left, and then Bob and Doug on the right as they prepare at the Cape for liftoff.
Once we hit T0 and a successful launch occurs, we will watch Falcon 9 and Dragon make their ascent until Falcon 9 and first and second stages separate and send Dragon on its way to the space station.
And once it gets on orbit, mission operators will prepare Dragon for on-orbit operations, where Dragon will execute a series of burns that are going to gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the International Space Station. And you're seeing some of that track in the animation on your screen right now. After doing enough of
Dragon
those burns,
SpaceX for
they'll put
weather
Dragon. Oh, sounds like we're going to get a weather update real quick for the crew.
Go ahead, SpaceX.
Yeah, we're currently just evaluating a constraint on the field mill rule, which looks at lightning energy dissipation. We expect to have an update at about T-20 and more information there on whether we would be able to continue into the prop load or scrub at that time.
Okay, Jay, thanks for the update. We appreciate it.
Copy. So I'll give you some more words in about 6 minutes.
Okay, so it sounds like we're going to find out in about 6 minutes if we're going to have enough time. And John, I was referring to a couple of those weather situations where we have to have a certain amount of time. In this case, with the field mills, about 15 minutes. So they have until about 16 minutes and 30 seconds to really make sure that we're going to have enough time for that to dissipate. So we're going to be listening for that weather update in just a couple of minutes, but it is going to be a pretty interesting trip uphill for them once they actually get on orbit.
And a very exciting countdown with 6 minutes to figure out if we are launching today. But targeting back to what we were talking about, next Dragon will make its approach and actually dock with the space station. This is a very different process from what we've seen with Dragon cargo deliveries in the past, which used a process called berthing. Now, berthing requires a spacecraft to approach the station and then stop so a crew member can maneuver the station's robotic arm to capture the spacecraft. Docking on this version of Dragon can be done autonomously.
Stage 2 cryo-helium load started.
Autonomously with no crew aboard the station. It's typically a faster process, both when arriving and leaving, but it does still require pinpoint accuracy to approach safely.
Once captured, a spacecraft then gets attached to a common berthing mechanism. It's the same type of port that we use to connect each of the modules together on board station. It's a little bit slower process than docking, but the hatches are significantly larger than docking ports, which makes them perfect for bringing up large cargo items.
Dragon will spend up to 120 days docked before preparing to return home. Following successful completion of Dragon's test objectives and cargo loading operations, the crew will close out the cabin, perform final system checks, and configure the vehicle for undocking. Once the automated undocking sequence is complete, Dragon will complete 2 departure burns using its Draco engines, pushing it away from the space station.
And then after Dragon departs the station, it's ready for its trip home. And that'll have deorbit entry and landing and a number of other operations. If you're looking at this animation, it might look like we're playing the one we played originally in reverse, because that's kind of how it goes, but just a little bit quicker. All of the operations following the final departure maneuver will include things like trunk separation, closing that nose cone again, executing a deorbit burn, and once they're inside the atmosphere, deploying drogue and then main parachutes, and then finally splashing down off the Florida coast, at which teams will move in, get Bob and Doug up out of the water, and get them out of the capsule once they're on the boat. So we have 4 minutes now until we get that next expected weather update. Let's go down now to the team at Kennedy. Murray?
All right, thanks, Dan. If you're just joining us, we are now T-minus 23 minutes and 48 seconds from the first launch of astronauts to the International Space Station from U.S. soil in 9 years. We're going to find out in less than 4 minutes if the weather looks good for that. And this will mark the beginning of a new era where more people will be able to fly to space than ever before. In fact, we took a poll a little bit earlier to ask you if you had the opportunity to fly to space, would you go? And 86% of those of you watching answered that you would go to space.
That's an incredible number. I think, realizing that you don't have to be a military astronaut or a NASA astronaut to fly in space. You can be a regular just a regular person going up to space on a SpaceX type rocket. So I think that's why the numbers are so high.
Yeah, and we are really thrilled to see all the folks watching along online. I know we certainly hope that that this is a go, but we're going to hear a little bit of a weather update in less than 3 minutes now. And Leland, I know they're waiting for a weather update, and they've come, almost all the way down the count. What do you think Bob and Doug are thinking about right now?
We on SES 129, we were having some weather problems, and I think we were getting close to the countdown, and then it seemed like the sky just cleared up right above our heads. We saw it, and we knew where we were going. And we always know that you can have any types of delays, fuel prop delays, all kinds of things that can happen, but we've trained over and over and over again for these types of scenarios. And so we want to be safe. We want to be safe for our families, and we'll do this another day if it doesn't work with the weather.
I love that John I always says weather. It's that thing that everybody talks about, but no one can do anything about it.
I know.
And it is this interesting thing of just, succumbing to Mother Earth. She's going to tell us if we can go or not today.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if it happens, look at it this way. Bob and Doug got one really great rehearsal in, right?
It's always best to practice and practice and practice, yes.
So again, we're less than 2 minutes now from that weather update that is going to go directly to Bob and Doug, and we will quiet down so we can listen in for that, because I know we can't wait to find out what that is. And those of you watching that have been following along, we are eagerly awaiting to hear whether the weather is going to be a showstopper today.
These clouds can seem really deceiving at times, right? You see the blue skies peeking through and you think everything's fine, but you just don't know. That's why we have those launch weather officers.
Absolutely. And I know, we've talked about it before, but it's not just the weather in Florida that they're looking at. They've got to look at weather downrange. If they were to have an abort in flight and they needed to come down somewhere in the ocean, they need to consider what the weather's like out there, because recovery teams have to go out and get them in a situation like that. So there's so many variables, and that's why not just with this flight, but with every human space flight we've had in the past, there's always a very good chance of a scrub, because you do have so much criteria that you have to meet. And we're going to listen in now. We're just seconds away from a weather update.
Stage 2, RP1 load complete.
That is liquid oxygen you see venting off the rocket. That's completely normal and expected. We're standing by for a weather update.
Unless you can give us another 10 minutes, I don't think we're going to get there with any of the rules today.
I'm going to give you 10 minutes.
I mean, another 10 minutes past T0.
Oh,
16:45 local. I think we'll probably be clear on all the rules, but not quite going to make it for this.
Okay. We're going to check back in with you in about 2 minutes, and then I'll call it up at about T-minus 17 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, there's some of them are starting to count down, but we still have one above 2,000. So if that gets below,
And that didn't sound great right there. That was the weather net going out, but we're still standing by for a final decision. And we're going to continue to listen in for an update, but in the meantime, we're going to go over to John Innsbrucker at SpaceX headquarters in California. John?
And Dragon SpaceX on weather. We're still
T-minus 18 minutes and counting.
LD is
we are still red
some
on weather.
Expect an update from LD.
We're waiting in about another minute for one final check with weather. We're going to check at T-minus 17 minutes possibly. We don't really expect that things will have improved. The weather officer was not optimistic that the weather would clear up that rapidly. We did hear the launch director, Mike Taylor, joke that, you know, if we could move 10 more minutes past the T0, weather conditions may improve, but Mike was not able to do that. We have an instantaneous window today. So at 17 minutes, we want to make that call because shortly after that, we will begin loading liquid oxygen onto the second stage. So if we're not going to have the opportunity to launch, if the clock's going to run out, stand by.
We continue to violate a couple different weather rules that we now do not expect to clear in time to allow for a launch today. We go ahead and end today's launch attempt. Launch control would end the launch auto sequence and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence, please. Launch abort has started.
And Dragon SpaceX, unfortunately, we are not going to launch today. You are go for 5.100 launch scrub.
5.100. It was a good effort by the teams, and we understand, and we'll meet you there.
Copy all.
We've heard the call from the crew. They have been informed. Launch director Mike Taylor has called a scrub for the day, and we got the feedback when the Dragon team informed Bob and Doug. They said we gave it a good try, but they understand, and we are here to try another day. So right now we did officially hold the clock. It looks like at T-minus 16 minutes, 54 seconds. The launch automatic sequence that controls the Falcon 9, the loading of propellants, the cycling of valves, that is also stopped. We now proceed into what is a normal scrub sequence for us. We practice this every launch. So now we move into